I am Brendan Bass, as I already said, and I'm going to talk to you about the fundamentals of Azure PlayFab now. Just to give you an idea of what it is that I do, basically you can think of me as the technical and business rep for PlayFab. So if you have any questions at all about the service, want to learn more, please feel free to let me know. And just so you're aware, my background is before I stepped into the role of helping game developers, since I love working across 1,000 games in a year instead of just one game for a year. I was a game developer for many years myself, so I feel your pain and I know the problems that you encounter. So, PlayFab itself. So, as Labrina said, slides aren't advancing. There we go. PlayFab is just one of a many technologies that Microsoft provides through the game stack, right? So there's Azure, there's Havoc, there's Xbox Live itself, Visual Studio, of course. Just a range of products that are available to you specifically for the development of games and to basically make your lives better. But why did we create PlayFab and why did Microsoft then acquire PlayFab and invest in it? And it's because the nature of games has very much changed over the years. Excuse me, I need to make sure that I'm recording this. I just remembered that they asked me to do that. There we go. So if you go back to when I first got into the industry, games were very much just a retail store distribution product, right? You'd print up your gold master, you'd send it off to reproduction, they'd master up the ton of discs, throw them into boxes and ship them out to stores, right? It was very much an event, and there was no real connection to the player at all, right? There's no interaction. The only feedback we really got from players was through emails or actual letters that they wrote to us at the time. So games were developed very much in isolation, treated as static objects. And with the advent of the internet, and as people, as more and more people got online, and it became more viable to do it that way, we started adding in more online components. So digital distribution came into being. More and more games added in multiplayer features and functionality. But then you saw a shift from just simply using online to actually making online an integral part of your experience. And that's where we bring in the games as a service part of the story to the games industry overall. With games as a service, of course, then you've got the social and mobile platforms. It's all about acquiring players using the free-to-play business model, microtransactions. All these things started to become part of it. And that was, a service base for your games in the wild. But we've really moved past that now. And today we think of it as games as community. And in this model, it's a direct distribution channel is there for the player because you're more connected to the player, right? Now that came in with games as a service, but it goes way past that. You're now engaging with players and you want to make your game part of their lifestyle, really, more than anything else. There are so many ways that we interact with players these days. And we just go to that instead. In addition to like players just buying and playing games nowadays and competing with each other, they're also now creating content, right? So you're making them more and more part of the experience directly, right? This is much more of a relationship with the player as an ongoing experience. And in addition to players building community through talking to each other, chat within the games and even outside the context of the games, they're also watching games more and more. So making not just playing your game, but observing how other players are playing your game as part of the process. I actually have a friend who has probably watched more hours of League of Legends on videos than he has played himself. So in this context, you need to be connecting with your players, thinking of them as a community and treating them as a community. And if you look at the top grossing games over the last couple of years, League of Legends, Dungeon Fighter Online, one of the things that you'll notice is that from 2019 to 2020, 70% of the games on that list are the same. And if you go back even further, you go to the 2017 to 2018, it's 90%. And for those who've particularly fast readers, you probably noticed this already, but 2017 to 2020, 50% of these games are in that list, right? League, Honor Kings, Dungeon Fighter Online. These are games that very heavily leverage live ops in order to drive their success. And live ops is basically live game operations, right? So this includes a connected experience and persistence with the players. This is designing and engineering the game in order to meet not just the immediate needs of design, but the ongoing experience of the players, right? It's managing the game over a period of time, which requires you to have a process and structure that has not just continuous integration and continuous development, but continuous investment. It's a mindset and a strategy more than it is a process. So using live ops, you're more thinking about the players as a community beyond simply the way they play. You're thinking about their intrinsic needs. Okay, people have intrinsic needs: mastering new skills, developing social connections. These are among the most fundamental needs that people have. And you're thinking about the players and their lives. So this isn't just a piece of entertainment for them, but it's you can think of it more as a hobby or an interest, something that they want to engage with and continue engaging with, right, over a long period of time. This is a different way to think about your design and the way that you're developing your games. Live ops games are very much player centric. You think about what they want, what they're interested in. You want to evolve the game as the needs of your player community evolve and change themselves. So if the players are investing in your game, they want to see a return back that makes sense to them. Traditional old school games that we were talking about before, they're about attraction, right? How do I get people to play my game? In this, you want to get people excited about the launch, sure, but you want to continually satisfy the needs of your players over time as their experience evolves. And obviously, to do that, you're going to need to use data heavily. This is probably the thing you've heard the most about if you've been hearing about live ops and studying it as part of developing your products. And it is very much about collecting that data and analyzing it, yes. But specifically, it's using that data to evaluate the player behaviors over time, to look for changes in player behaviors overall, but also to look for the inflection points where you have like a drop-off in usage, right? If you have a drop-off in usage, then you want to create a hypothesis about why that is, and then do some experiments on that to see if you can figure out, a way to change that behavior. Your first-time user experience, for example, you have a tutorial in your game, and you're going to have stages in that tutorial. Player did A, then B, then C, then D. If you have a fall-off in players between C and D, then clearly there's some confusion, some sticking point that's preventing them from getting to D. And that's what you want to look into. And like I said, experimentation is a big part of that. And this is very much, live ops is a very experimentation-focused process. So you iterate and evolve your game through continuous engagement with the players. And to do that, what you do is you create experiments, you ship the experiments to subsets of users, potentially only to new users, or potentially to all users, and you check to see whether or not it's successful. If it is, then you're expanding that experience to more users. Move on to the next experiment. Your content needs to be flexible, obviously, as part of this. You need to be able to rapidly iterate on and change things in the game. So much of the content of your game is going to live in an online context so that you're able to change it without having to go back and change the game itself, the code, and ship it out to players. So this isn't really like a waterfall process. It's much more iterative. And a specific example of that would be this. So these two lines represent two games that shipped in the PlayFab service. They didn't ship at the same time. These are the lifetime, weekly lifetime charts for each of these two games. The orange line will remain nameless for obvious reasons. That's a game that shipped and was a little ways in, about a little less than a year into the life cycle of the game, was a featured game on both iOS and Android platforms. So their numbers just shot up massively all at once. We worked with them to try to get them using live ops, thinking basically for their game, to try to get them to use this experimentation process, evaluate their data, work with their players to find what meets their needs more. Unfortunately, this particular studio did not have any interest in that. They ship games and then they move on to their next game, very much the old methodology of games. And that's what you see here is there's a lot of players came in and then over time it falls off. The sawtooth pattern is because, weekends, basically. Every time you see a spike, it's Saturday, Sunday. And that's what you would see with games back in the day. You'd see usage and then a fall off and a long tail. The blue line is a much better story. That blue line represents a game that they put it out into the market. At the time, this was a very small, very indie team, and they didn't really do much other than just tweak and tune their game for the first, about 2 years they were running it. And they didn't do certainly any user acquisition at that time. But they were talking to us throughout that, and they were learning about how to do live ops and how to evaluate their data and what experimentation they might want to do and how that would work and fine tuning their process. And then right where you see that dip and then the takeoff in the blue line, that's where they turned on live ops. That's where they started doing all of the things we're talking about here and really evolving the game with their players. And as you can see, the game just grew and grew and grew from there. And the line continued to grow past that to the point where the game was successful enough that company, which is Colibri, and the game is Idle Miner Tycoon, they were purchased by Ubisoft earlier this year, I believe. So, PlayFab. I think I just heard something drop. Excuse me. Nope, we're good. Okay. So the mission of PlayFab is to empower game teams of all sizes to more deeply engage with their players and communities. And we do that by providing a complete back-end platform for live games. There we go. And we have a wide range of features that feed into that, right? We have multiplayer services so that you can host games, run guilds, tournaments, things along those lines. There's chat and relay services. We have all of the live ops components, so all of the events, hooks that enable you to drive functionality based on those events occurring, user segmentation, things like that. And then there's insights, all of the data systems that we have for you to evaluate your data on your players, so, see when they're churning, to be able to personalize offers for them, do reporting internally, all of that. And you can see down here at the bottom the range of functionality that I'm talking about. And it is a pretty wide range, and there's a lot of documentation. So I would encourage you to, if you're looking at specific things, look at the tutorials we have on our documentation site. But if you have more complex needs and you're struggling a bit to see how your game would fit into all of this, feel free to set up some time with us to talk about your game in more depth. So, PlayFab as a service. Basically, the simplest way to look at it is your game is being powered by, back-end services. As the players play the services, you've got activity coming in. That's the events that are driving, the information into the service. And those events generate insights about the players, about their activity. And those insights are used to drive intelligent actions into the game. And we do all of that in real time. So all of these events are within 1 second processed so that you can take action upon them, do things for the players, all in response to that. And I'm going to show you an example of what that looks like in just a minute. And of course, this is all designed to be completely agnostic to any platform or language. We work basically with everything. If your device can make, and your language can make a web API call, it can use PlayFab. And yeah, we've grown the service into over 5,000 titles using it live in the world today, billions of player accounts, and we have millions and millions of events. I think the last time I looked, we were somewhere around 130,000 requests per second being processed by the service. So we can scale to any size of game. We're the back end for games like Roblox, Minecraft, obviously, all of the Microsoft Studios games, Rainbow Six. So definitely, regardless of the size of your game, we can help you. The one thing I would ask is that if you do have a massive game and you have a launch coming up, talk to us ahead of time so that we can make sure that we're pre-scaling anything we need ahead of any launch day needs. So with that, let's have a quick look at what that looks like. So this is the game manager for PlayFab. This is where this is your dashboard basically for your game, which allows you to see all of the fundamentals up front. And this is our demo application. So you're not going to see a lot of very interesting things here, but I can show you some of the basics of how the service works. So you can see you have, like I said, fundamental KPI reporting here. One of the most interesting is this, the API calls, because you can use this to filter down to see any API calls being made, or for that matter, if you're seeing any errors, whatever, you can filter down based on the errors. So you can see that in this chart here. Okay, now this is Unicorn Battle. And actually, let me switch to the monitor first so that you can see the events as they come in. So this is Unicorn Battle, a little fake game that we put together in order to demonstrate how everything works. And if I click play here, what you'll see is all of these events suddenly flowing in for what I just did. So as I said, all the events come in immediately processed, all in real time. And let me pull up my player account. So I'm going to open that in a new tab here. So this is the player that just signed in. And if I were to play around with the game, there we go. You'll see we get a bunch more events in again. This is what just happened. I played around. The game reported on statistic changes, virtual currency balances, all kinds of things that just happened over the course of gameplay. So my player, because I've been playing for a while, has a number of user segments that he's in. One of them is this high experience points player segment. So this segment is for players that have more than 3,000 experience points. Okay, so it's a statistic I've defined in the game, total experience points gained, greater than 3,000. You can make these as complicated or as simple as you like by adding in other factors. And we track on a range of things across the player profile that give you the ability to fine tune your player segment so that you can define the specific behaviors that you're looking to track on and either reward or do something specific with. And when players enter or leave these segments, you can take actions. You can contact them in different ways. You can change stats and currencies, grant them items. And the most flexible thing, you can run scripts. And scripts allow you to do any custom server authoritative logic that you want to set up in the cloud. And of course, you can ban players as needed as well. And when players leave segments, you have the ability to run actions as well. I should highlight. Okay, so the reason I point this out is, first off, I'm going to remove myself from that 3,000, that high experience points player group. There we go. I'll set myself to exactly 3,000 so that I'm just barely under it. Save. And when I clicked save, that actually generated an event for the service, which took me out of the segments. You can see I'm no longer in that high experience points player group. And the reason I did that, I'm going to go over here. This is just the most basic example of what you can do with live game operations. It would be presenting someone with unique pricing, right? So they're taking some action, and so you're going to give them some unique offer. Like maybe they lost a fight to a boss 5 times in a row, and so you want to present them with a unique store that shows them, a custom set of goods that might help them to get past that boss. In my case, I'm going to show them a store based upon them being in that high experience points player group. So this is the catalog for the game. Catalog is every item that can be in the player inventory, whether you grant it to the players or sell it to the players. The items obviously have a range of functionality in this service based upon the needs of your game. This is it's evolved over time to account for the needs of a wide range of game types. So you might not use everything, but it's here if you need it. So things like durables and consumables, whether or not you have a trading system, and of course, whatever pricing you want to set for the items in virtual currencies, or RM stands for real money. Okay. We also have bundles. This is an item that comes with other items included, or other virtual currencies in this case. And the bundles, basically, it's when you get the bundle, you get the items that are attached to it. So they all come as a unit. A container is similar, but you don't get the items that are in the container until you actually open it. There's a specific API call for that. So the player opens the container and they get the items, in this case currency, and a pick from a drop table. So the drop tables are, I'll report that as soon as I get out of this meeting. Drop tables are random result tables, so loot drops. And a drop table can reference other drop tables. So you can have a tree of logic about what you're granting to the players, which is particularly useful for games like collectible card games, trading card games. Okay, but here, the most important part of this is the store. So the store is, and that bug was fixed yesterday, and it's back. That's lovely. Okay, so I cannot show you the store. The store basically is a subset of items for which you have unique pricing that you show to the player. The store also has the ability to override which store is being shown to the player based upon user segmentation, which is what I wanted to show you. My apologies that that's not working at the moment. I'll have a talk with our game manager team about that as soon as we get out of this. So the override basically says, okay, if the player is in a segment that is defined to have a different store that should be shown instead of the current store, I'm going to show that store. And the override only does one hop. So you can't wind up with an infinite loop, for example, in that sort of circumstance. And you also can set up your override stores. So your special stores, you can set them up by default to force the player back to the base store. So what that means is you can make it so that no hacker can use the pricing in your special override stores, even if they figure out the name of the store. So here's what that would look like. So if I click on this, that takes me to the store, and you see we've got the basic profile store, right? Health potion, crystal key, pile of gold. But since I'm 1 point below that point for the, there we go, for getting into the high experience points player group, when I complete this level, see all these events flow in, and my player is now in the high experience points player group. So when I click on this, I get a different store. I get the elite store instead, right? A large pile of gold, 5 key bundle, etc. So that's just the, like I say, the simplest possible example of how you can use live game operations to vary the experience for your players, and so help to keep them more engaged and help them to stay in your game longer and be part of your community for a longer period of time. Okay, let me switch back to the talk. So, call to action for you guys. Absolutely, feel free to create an account on the PlayFab site, developer.playfab.com. It's absolutely free. The core services, which is the things outside of multiplayer server hosting and party, are free while your title is in development mode. Development mode is limited to 100,000 player accounts. So you could even like launch your title into an alpha with a limited number of players and iterate on it there until you're ready to go full launch in development mode. It's important to bear in mind that multiplayer server hosting and party, given that they use servers dedicated to your title, are services that we provide a limited amount of free usage on. But even in development mode, those do have cost if you go outside the limited free usage hours. But then, yeah, think about your own live ops strategy, right? What metric are you using right now? What things have you wanted to be able to do in your games, but you haven't been able to, right? And what data do you need to drive good decisions about your game? We have a wide range of events that are built into the service. All of the things that you were just seeing, like login and purchase of items, whether with virtual currencies or real monies, changes to statistics, all those things that are built-in functionality of the PlayFab service have built-in events that you can use out of the box. But you can also generate your own custom events. So any additional things you need in order to drive your tracking of users, like the stages of your first-time user experience, for example, you can build in as custom events, and so be able to have good data around that, and so drive good decisions. We have a guide to live ops that is available through our site. That is linked in this, and I think someone was going to post that link into the chat window. If I don't see it when I come out of this, I'll post it myself. And certainly feel free to reach out to me. As I said, I'm available to answer any technical or business questions about the service. If you're running into technical issues, I probably will direct you to our support team, which can help you through either our forums, or we have a ticket-based system for anyone in the standard or premium tiers. And certainly, just for completeness of your awareness of the service, we also have an emergency contact system available for anybody who's in the premium or enterprise tiers of our service as well. So if you have a large real-time game and you have a real-time issue, you're able to create an on-call for our engineering team, and so be able to get them to look into something immediately, 24/7. Okay, well, thanks everyone for your time today. I really appreciate the opportunity to address you, give you a little bit of an overview of the PlayFab service, a little taste of what the service is capable of doing for you.